Hello and welcome. I'm Yamini, joined today by Paul Vorbach, Managing Director of Academy Global. Today, we're talking about big government technology projects, the ones that run from hundreds of thousands through to many millions, and that have a habit of going badly wrong. And when they fail, everyone looks at the budget and the missed deadlines. And we're going to look underneath that, something that shapes the outcome long before anyone realizes there's a problem. So, Paul, when a government department signs a major IT contract, what is actually changing hands? And is it just software and money, or is there something else being handed over?
Yeah, so the most obvious part of the transaction from the buyer's point of view is the money that's changing hands, and it's the timeframes and the expectations that they will start to see a business impact. So they're the things that we're most consciously and deliberately aware of. What's often more subtle, however, is that power through knowledge is also being handed over in the process. So organizations, particularly when they have distributed information systems, will commonly not have a common and consistent overview of what their data is, for example. And many of the technology platforms which are being acquired, the enterprise resource planning or ERP systems, are really designed to try to overcome that problem. But the problem is not well understood commonly, and the vendor over time, and sometimes from quite early days, starts to build a level of awareness significantly higher than what the organization has. And this can lead to, well, it does lead to significantly increased dependency. Now, what that manifests as is contract changes, variations, needs that weren't presently understood at the time of developing the scope. And these things play out over the life of the contract. And it's why so many of our IT contracts have budget blowouts and have significant time blowouts as well.
Is there a case where you can point to where an organization lost the keys, and what did it end up costing them?
Well, probably a high profile recent example from the public sector. And I hasten to add that these sorts of problems occur in the private sector as well. But there's not the same level of scrutiny and public awareness very often because there's not the same levels of control that you might see in a audit office in a public sector. So a recent example, which is interesting, is Birmingham City Council. It's a very large council. It's the largest across the United Kingdom and Europe. It's around 2 times as large as the Brisbane City Council in Australia, which is Australia's largest council. So we're talking about a very large organisation and a complex organisation. In 2019, they worked on a system with Oracle Cloud, and their original budget was about £19 million or about 38 million Australian dollars. And it was meant to be live by 2020. Now, the pricing was largely based upon a fairly standardized offering. So very quickly, it became very clear that the scope was changing, variation requests were going through. The council was learning a lot more about the condition of its data. Oracle Cloud was learning more about the condition of its data, and many changes and customizations took place. So the costs ultimately actually they did double to 38 million pound or about 76 million Australian dollars equivalent. And even in April 22, well past the original deadline, the council couldn't still reconcile its own bank accounts. So over the longer period of time of subsequent adjustments throughout 2023, the bill topped over 100 million pounds or just under 200 million Australian dollars. This led to significant financial distress on Birmingham City Council, to the point whereby it ultimately needed to go into a state of administration. So that's a very high profile example. And we have some Australian examples as well, which we can talk about if that's of interest.
Definitely. You mentioned an Australian example. Can you elaborate more on that example as well and how that organization lost the keys?
Yeah, so Queensland Health is a textbook case of how wrong it can be. It's a little bit dated now. The case goes back to 2007, and effectively Queensland government, through one of its major departments, Queensland Health, entered into a contract with IBM it was a fixed price contract, um, and it was for about 6.2 million Australian dollars, and it was to rebuild the payroll system. Now, payroll systems in health environments, particularly public health environments, are incredibly complicated. There's lots of different classes of employees. You have specialists. You have a lot of casual staff. You have staff moving between different hospital facilities. So they're very, very complex organisations, and unfortunately for Queensland Health, the transfer of knowledge and in turn power to IBM led to a very, very significant disruption. People weren't being paid. Some people were being overpaid, or being underpaid. So this, of course, has enormous impacts upon staff confidence. It impacts the public's confidence. It can affect morale of the workforce, and can create dysfunction right across a major department. And one such as health, where everybody in the state of Queensland has an interest in ensuring that people are motivated and thinking about doing the best possible work in the health environment, not whether they're likely to be paid or not. Now, there were 78,000 staff affected by this. The contract went through many, many variations. There were lots of disputes. It became very acrimonious. The premier at the time was involved in quite a lot of public commentary, which wasn't probably helpful for the relationship between Queensland Health and IBM. And ultimately, the headline here is that the final estimate of the total cost, including litigation, all of the variations of the contracts, was estimated to be over $1.2 billion. So it gives you some indication as to how substantially these things can blow out.
Coming to my final question, what separates the agencies that stay in control from the ones that lose it? And for a team that wants to build that, where should they start?
So the genesis of where these problems occur really goes back to the planning and sourcing activity that precedes the contract. By the time the contract eventuates, you have something which theoretically, legally, is very flexible and can change through a process known as contract variations. But practically, the challenge is that variations usually will bring with them significant potential time delays, and very commonly cost blowouts as well. So the challenge arises through the procurement process, which then ends up with something that tries to be resolved through the contract management phase. So excellence in planning, researching, developing requirements documents, ensuring that the organisations who are being appraised realistically, recognising that there can be opportunism from a supplier who wants to take advantage of this knowledge transfer. So there's a combination of skills that range from what we might describe as fairly classical procurement, contract management skills, right through to effective negotiation skills. So across each of those key areas is really where the biggest return on investment comes in terms of building capability.
Thank you, Paul. That's a wonderful explanation and a genuinely different way to think about what you're signing when you sign a technology contract. Thank you for explaining that to us, and thank you all for watching.